What happens when a desperate, single mother shows up to the most important job interview of her life with her sick child in tow? When Maria walked into that gleaming corporate tower, she expected rejection, humiliation, maybe even security escorting her out. She had no idea that bringing her son would unlock a secret that would change both their lives forever. This is a story about courage in the face of impossible choices, hidden connections, and how sometimes our greatest vulnerabilities become our greatest strengths. Before we dive into Maria's incredible journey, I'd love to know where you're watching from tonight. Drop a comment and let me know your city. Are you joining us from New York, London, São Paulo, Mumbai, or somewhere else entirely? It's amazing to think that this story of unexpected hope is reaching hearts around the world. Now let's begin. The elevator climbed toward the 40th floor, each ascending number feeling like a countdown to Maria's doom. She clutched her 6-year-old son Lucas closer, his small body burning with fever against her chest. The other passengers in their expensive suits cast judgmental glances at the woman in the wrinkled dress holding a clearly unwell child. "Mama, I don't feel good," Lucas whispered, his voice barely audible. "I know, mi amor. Just a little longer, okay?" Maria's voice trembled as she checked her phone. 2:47 p.m. She had 13 minutes to make it to the most important job interview of her life. 3 months. That's how long they'd been struggling since she lost her job at the restaurant. The eviction notice was already taped to their apartment door. Lucas needed medicine they couldn't afford. This interview at Henderson Industries, one of the city's most prestigious consulting firms, was her last hope. The elevator dinged at the 40th floor, and Maria's heart sank as she saw the pristine reception area, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and a receptionist who looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. This wasn't a place for people like them. "Excuse me." Maria approached the desk, Lucas still in her arms. "I'm Maria Santos. I have an interview at 3 with..." "Oh." The receptionist's expression shifted from professional to uncomfortable. Her eyes lingered on Lucas, who was now coughing softly. "You're here for the operations manager position?" "Yes, Maria began, but was cut off by whispers from other candidates sitting in the leather chairs nearby. Did she seriously bring a kid to an interview? That's so unprofessional. "Henderson's going to love this." Maria's cheeks burned. She'd called that morning to explain her situation. Her babysitter had cancelled last minute. Lucas was sick. She had no one else to watch him. The assistant had been dismissive, saying only that Mr. Henderson was very particular about his interviews. "Ma'am," the receptionist said quietly, glancing around nervously, "perhaps you should reschedule. Mr. Henderson is... well, he's not really the type to..." "Please." The word came out more desperate than Maria intended. "I know this isn't ideal, but I really need this job. I can keep him quiet, I promise. He's a good boy, he won't cause any trouble." Lucas lifted his head weakly, his dark eyes glassy with fever. "I'll be good, Mama." The receptionist bit her lip, clearly torn. I suppose I could ask. But honestly, Mr. Henderson has never... he's not known for being particularly warm." Maria had heard the stories. "James Henderson, CEO and founder of Henderson Industries. Brilliant, ruthless, completely focused on business. He'd built his company from nothing into a multi-billion-dollar empire. The man didn't even attend company social events, let alone tolerate disruptions during interviews." "Maria Santos," a crisp voice called out. Maria turned to see a woman in a sharp black suit, mid-50s. Steel grey hair pulled into a perfect bun, eyes that seemed to catalogue everything. "I'm Catherine Mills, Mr. Henderson's executive assistant. You're here for the operations manager interview?" "Yes, ma'am." "I know this situation is unusual." "Follow me." Catherine's tone was unreadable. They walked down a hallway lined with awards and accolades. Henderson Industries Company of the Year. James Henderson, Entrepreneur of the Decade. The walls seemed to scream success, making Maria feel smaller with each step. Lucas coughed again, and Maria whispered soothing words in Spanish. A few employees looked up from their desks, some with sympathy, others with barely concealed annoyance. They stopped before massive oak doors. Catherine knocked twice, then entered. "Mr. Henderson, your 3:00 appointment is here." The office was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern art on the walls, a desk that probably cost more than Maria made in a year, and behind it sat a man who looked exactly as intimidating as she'd imagined. James Henderson was tall even sitting down, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to cut right through you. He wore a navy suit that screamed expensive, and when he looked up from his computer, his expression was completely neutral. "Mrs. Santos," his voice was deep, controlled. Then his gaze shifted to Lucas, and something flickered across his face, too quick for Maria to interpret. "Mr. Henderson, I apologize for—" "Sit." He gestured to the chairs across from his desk. Maria sat carefully, adjusting Lucas in her lap. The boy was quiet now, too tired to even lift his head. The silence stretched, broken only by Lucas's labored breathing. James studied them both, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was surprisingly gentle. "How old is he?" "6, Maria answered, surprised by the question. "And he's ill?" "Yes, sir. Fever and a cough. I tried to find someone to watch him, but sometimes we don't have choices." His voice carried a weight Maria didn't understand. "What's his name?" "Lucas." James leaned back in his chair, still watching them. "Lucas, that's a good name, strong." Lucas peeked up at the mention of his name, offering a weak smile. "Tell me about yourself." "Mrs. Santos." James's attention returned to Maria. "And please, speak freely. Don't worry about him." He nodded toward Lucas. "Children belong wherever their parents need them to be." The unexpected kindness in his voice caught Maria off guard. She'd expected coldness, judgment, maybe an immediate dismissal. Instead, she found herself opening up in ways she never had in an interview. She told him about her background in operations, her years managing restaurant logistics, her attention to detail and ability to solve problems under pressure. She talked about her education, the business degree she'd earned at night while working full-time, the additional certifications she'd pursued even while pregnant with Lucas. "Your resume mentions you're fluent in Spanish and Portuguese as well as English," James noted. "Yes, sir. I grew up speaking Spanish at home, learned Portuguese when I lived in Brazil for 2 years, and obviously English is my primary language now. That's valuable. We have expanding operations in Latin America." He paused, glancing at Lucas, who had dozed off in Maria's arms. "Being a single mother while building a career, that must be challenging." Maria's throat tightened. "It is, but Lucas is my world. Everything I do is for him." Something shifted in James's expression, a softness Maria hadn't expected. He was quiet for a long moment, studying them both. "Miss Santos, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Lucas's father, is he in the picture?" Maria's jaw tightened. "No, sir, when he found out I was pregnant, he made it clear he wasn't interested in being a father. I've raised Lucas alone since he was born." "I see." James's voice carried a note she couldn't identify, sadness, anger. "And Lucas's last name?" "Santos, my name." "Of course." James stood and walked to his window, hands clasped behind his back. "Mrs. Santos, I'm going to share something with you that I don't typically discuss in interviews, or ever, really." Maria held her breath. 27 years ago, I made a decision I've regretted every day since." He turned to face her, and she was shocked to see pain in his eyes. "I was young, focused entirely on building my career. When my girlfriend told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I told her I wasn't ready to be a father, that a child would ruin my plans." Maria's heart began to race. "I offered to pay for other options. When she refused, I told her she was on her own. I walked away from the most important thing in my life because I was a coward." His voice grew heavy. "Her name was Isabella Santos." The room went silent except for Lucas's soft breathing. Maria felt the world tilt on its axis. "She tried to reach out to me a few times over the years," James continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I was so consumed with building this company, so convinced I'd made the right choice, that I had my lawyers send cease and desist letters. I never wanted to be reminded of what I'd given up." Maria's hands were shaking. "Isabella Santos was my sister." "I know." James's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I knew the moment you walked in here with him. He has her eyes. And yours. But how did you know I was... Your resume, your references, from the restaurant where you worked, they mentioned you took time off. When your sister was dying, that you took custody of her son afterward. I had my team do some research after I saw your application. He paused. Your sister, Isabella, how did she... Cancer. The word came out as barely a whisper. She fought for 2 years. She never married Lucas's father. She said he wasn't worth the effort of tracking down. James closed his eyes as if in pain. She didn't tell you about me? She said his father was someone who didn't deserve to know. Lucas existed. Maria's voice grew stronger. Someone who made it clear he didn't want anything to do with his own child. She was right. The admission seemed to physically pain him. I didn't deserve to know him. I still don't. Lucas stirred in Maria's arms, opening his eyes and looking around the room with the confusion of a feverish child. Tia Maria? He mumbled. Where are we? We're at an important meeting. Mi amor. Maria smoothed his hair back from his forehead. James approached slowly, as if he were approaching a wild animal that might startle. He knelt down beside Maria's chair, bringing himself to Lucas's eye level. Hello, Lucas, he said softly. Lucas studied him with the direct gaze children use when meeting strangers. Hi, are you the boss man? Despite everything, James smiled, the first genuine smile Maria had seen from him. I suppose I am. How are you feeling? Not good. My tummy hurts and I'm hot. I'm sorry to hear that. When I was little and I felt sick, my grandmother used to make me special soup. Would you like me to have someone make you some soup? Lucas nodded weakly. James stood and pressed a button on his desk phone. Catherine, could you please have someone from the executive kitchen prepare some chicken soup for our young guest? And contact Dr. Reynolds. Ask him to come up and take a look at Lucas when he has a moment. Right away, Mr. Henderson. You don't have to do that, Maria protested. I can't afford a private doctor. You're not paying for it. James's tone left no room for argument. And neither is Lucas. He returned to his desk, but his entire demeanor had changed. The intimidating CEO was gone, replaced by a man carrying decades of regret. Mrs. Santos, Maria, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Did Isabella ever mention wanting Lucas to know his father? Maria considered the question carefully. In the hospital near the end, she talked about it sometimes. She said she wondered if she'd made the right choice keeping you away from him. She worried that Lucas would grow up with questions she couldn't answer. And what did you tell her? I told her that Lucas was loved completely by the people who were there for him. That sometimes the family we choose is more important than the one we're born into. James nodded slowly. And you still believe that? I do, but... Maria hesitated. But I also believe people can change. That mistakes don't have to define us forever. She looked down at Lucas, then back at James. Isabella also said something else in those final weeks. She said she hoped that someday, when Lucas was old enough to understand, he might have the chance to decide for himself whether he wanted to know his father. Even after how badly I failed both of them? Especially because of that. She said real courage isn't never making mistakes. It's what you do after you realize you were wrong. James was quiet for a long time, studying the two people who had walked into his office and turned his world upside down. A knock at the door interrupted the silence. Catherine entered with a tray of soup and crackers, followed by an older gentleman with kind eyes and a medical bag. Dr. Reynolds, James stood. Thank you for coming. This is Lucas and his Aunt Maria. Lucas has a fever and cough. Dr. Reynolds smiled warmly at Lucas. Well, hello there, young man. I hear you're not feeling too well. As the doctor examined Lucas, taking his temperature, listening to his chest, asking gentle questions, Maria watched James pace by the window. When Dr. Reynolds finished, James immediately approached. How is he? He has a mild respiratory infection, nothing serious. Some rest, plenty of fluids, and this antibiotic should clear it right up. He handed Maria a prescription bottle. These are samples. Should be enough for the full course of treatment. I can pay for the prescription, Maria began. Already taken care of, James said firmly. Dr. Reynolds, thank you. After the doctor left, The three of them sat in silence. Lucas was feeling slightly better after the soup and medication, though he remained curled up in Maria's lap. "Maria," James said finally, "I need to be honest with you about something else. I didn't agree to this interview because of your qualifications, though they are impressive. I agreed to it because I knew who you were." Who he was? Maria felt a chill. "So this was all, what, some kind of experiment?" "No, see," his voice was firm. "It was an opportunity to see the child I abandoned, and the woman who stepped up to raise him when I failed to. I wanted to see what kind of people you both were. And I'm humbled." He sat down again, leaning forward in his chair. "Maria, you've raised an incredible little boy. He's polite, kind, clearly intelligent. And you, bringing him with you today, knowing it might cost you the job. That took courage I'm not sure I possess. I didn't have a choice. You had choices. You could have missed the interview. You could have left him with a stranger. You could have hidden who he was from me. Instead, you brought him into the lion's den because you believed it was the right thing to do." Maria felt tears threatening. "I just want to take care of him." "I know, and you've done an amazing job." James paused. "The operations manager position. It's yours if you want it." "Because I'm Lucas's aunt?" "Because you're the most qualified candidate I've interviewed, and because you've proven you can handle impossible situations with grace." He smiled slightly. "The fact that you're Lucas's aunt just means I get the chance to try to make up for some of the damage I've done." "And what about Lucas? What are you expecting from him?" James looked at the little boy who was now dozing again. "Nothing. I'm expecting nothing from him. He owes me nothing. I'm the one who owes him a lifetime of birthdays and bedtime stories and school plays." His voice grew thick. "If you'll allow it, I'd like to try to be part of his life, not as a replacement for Isabella or for you. You're his family in every way that matters, but maybe as someone who cares about him. He's going to have questions. I know, and when he's old enough, I'll answer them honestly. All of them." Lucas stirred, looking up at James with curious eyes. "Are you really the boss of this whole building?" "I am." "Wow, that must be hard work." "It is, but do you know what the hardest job in the world is?" Lucas shook his head. "Being a good parent. Your Tia Maria has the hardest job in the world, and she does it better than anyone I've ever met." Lucas smiled up at Maria. "Tia Maria is the best. She makes me pancakes shaped like dinosaurs." "Dinosaur pancakes?" James looked impressed. "I've never made dinosaur pancakes. Maybe Tia Maria could teach you," Lucas said matter-of-factly. James met Maria's eyes over Lucas's head. Maybe she could. Over the next hour, they talked about practical matters. The job would start in 2 weeks. The salary was more than Maria had dared hope for, with benefits that would cover Lucas's medical needs and education. James also offered to help with their housing situation, not as charity, he insisted, but as an investment in one of his employees. As they prepared to leave, James knelt down next to Lucas again. "Lucas, I want you to know something. Your mama Isabella loved you very much. She was brave and strong and beautiful, and you have all of those qualities too. Tia Maria tells me stories about her sometimes. I hope she continues to. And maybe someday I could tell you some stories too, about when your mama and I were young." Lucas considered this seriously. "Okay, but only if they're good stories. I'll make sure they are." As they walked toward the elevator, Lucas tugging on Maria's hand, James called out, "Maria?" She turned back. "Thank you, for raising him with love instead of bitterness, for protecting him from my failures." While still leaving the door, "Open for something better," he paused. "Isabella would be proud of you." The elevator doors closed, and Maria finally allowed herself to cry, tears of relief, exhaustion, and hope for the future. 3 months later, Lucas was performing in his first-grade play about community helpers. In the audience sat Maria, beaming with pride. Next to her sat James, who had attended every school event since that day in his office. He was learning to make dinosaur pancakes, though they weren't quite as good as Maria's yet. Lucas had started calling him Mr. James, and while it wasn't Dad, it was a beginning. Some evenings, James would come over for dinner, bringing stories about Isabella from their youth and patiently answering Lucas's endless questions about everything from business to dinosaurs. It wasn't a perfect family, and it couldn't undo the years of absence. But it was theirs, built on honesty, forgiveness, and the understanding that love isn't always about biology. Sometimes it's about showing up day after day and choosing to do better. As Lucas took his bow on stage, dressed as a firefighter, he waved at both of them, with the unself-conscious joy of a child who knows he is loved completely. And in that moment, both Maria and James understood that sometimes the most important interviews aren't about jobs at all. They're about finding our way back to what matters most. The woman who thought bringing her son would ruin her chances had instead brought healing to a broken family. And the CEO who thought he had lost his only chance at fatherhood learned that love, like hope, is something that can grow even in the most unexpected places. After all, sometimes our greatest vulnerabilities really do become our greatest strengths. 6 weeks into Maria's new job at Henderson Industries, she thought she'd found her rhythm. The work was challenging but rewarding, and James had kept his promise to maintain professional boundaries during office hours. But that Tuesday morning, everything changed when Catherine rushed into Maria's office with panic in her eyes. "Maria, we have a crisis. The Santiago project team is demanding to meet with Mr. Henderson today, and they only speak Spanish. Our translator just called in sick, and the client is threatening to pull out if we can't communicate effectively." Maria's heart raced. The Santiago account was worth $12 million. She'd heard James and the senior partners discussing it in hushed, stressed tones for weeks. "What about the translation service you usually use? They can't get anyone here for 3 hours, and the Santiago team flies back to Colombia tonight. Mr. Henderson is, well, he's not handling the pressure well." As if summoned by their conversation, James appeared in Maria's doorway. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his tie loosened, stress lines etched deep around his eyes. "Maria, I need to ask you something, and I need you to know that saying no won't affect your position here in any way." "What is it?" "The Santiago meeting. I know you're fluent in Spanish, but this would be stepping outside your role as operations manager. I would never normally ask an employee to—" "I'll do it," Maria said without hesitation. "You don't even know what's at stake. I know it's important to you, to the company, and I know I can help." 2 hours later, Maria sat in the main conference room with James and 5 Colombian executives who had flown in specifically for this meeting. The tension was palpable. Months of negotiations had led to this moment, and miscommunication had brought everything to the brink of collapse. "Señores," Maria began, her Spanish flowing naturally, "entiendo que han tenido algunas preocupaciones sobre los términos del contrato." For the next 3 hours, Maria didn't just translate, she mediated. She understood the cultural nuances that had been lost in previous communications, the specific concerns about timeline flexibility that the Colombian team hadn't been able to articulate in English, and the underlying business values that both sides actually shared. When Mr. Santiago, the lead executive, expressed frustration about what he perceived as American arrogance in the negotiations, Maria gently reframed his concerns in a way that James could understand without losing face. "Mr. Henderson," she said, switching to English, "I think there's been a misunderstanding about implementation timelines. In Colombian business culture, relationships and trust building are just as important as efficiency. They're not trying to delay the project. They want to ensure it succeeds long term." James looked at her with something approaching awe. "What do they need from us?" Maria turned back to the Colombian team, engaging them in rapid Spanish, laughing at jokes, asking thoughtful follow-up questions. Gradually, the atmosphere in the room shifted from confrontational to collaborative. By the end of the meeting, not only had Henderson Industries saved the Santiago contract, but they'd expanded it. The Colombian team was so impressed with Maria's cultural competence and communication skills that they requested her as their primary point of contact for all future projects. As the Santiago team left, Mr. Santiago approached Maria privately. "Señora Santos, you are extraordinary. My company has done business with many American firms, But never have we felt so understood. You honor your heritage while building bridges. After the conference room cleared, James stood by the window, looking out at the city but clearly lost in thought. "Maria, what you did today," he began. "I just translated." "No." He turned to face her. "You did something I've been trying to do my entire career. You made them feel heard, respected. You turned a failing negotiation into a partnership." He paused. "I've been running this company for 25 years, and I learned more about real leadership watching you today than in all my MBA courses combined. You're being too generous." "I'm being honest." James walked closer. "Maria, I need to tell you something, and I hope you'll hear me out." Her stomach tightened. "Okay. I've been thinking about succession planning. Not immediate succession," he added quickly, seeing her expression, "but long-term strategy for the company's future. James, if this is about Lucas, this has nothing to do with Lucas. This is about you." His voice was firm. "What I saw today, your ability to understand people, to build bridges, to find solutions that serve everyone, that's not just a skill. That's leadership." Maria felt dizzy. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I think you have the potential to run this company someday. And I'm asking if you'd be interested in me mentoring you toward that possibility." The offer hung in the air between them like something fragile and precious. "James, I barely graduated college. I've been working in operations for 6 weeks. I'm not executive material. Neither was I when I started. The difference is, you have something I had to learn the hard way. You understand that business is ultimately about people. You proved that today." That evening, Maria picked up Lucas from his after-school program, her mind still reeling from the day's events. As they walked home, Lucas chattering about his art project, she found herself looking at the city differently. The buildings that had once seemed intimidating now looked like possibilities. "Tia Maria, why are you smiling like that?" Lucas asked. "Just thinking about work stuff, mi amor." "Was it a good day?" Maria looked down at her nephew, this little boy who had changed everything just by being sick on the wrong day. "Yeah, Lucas, it was a very good day." 3 months later, Maria was working late in her new office. James had promoted her to senior operations, director after the Santiago success, and when she received a call that changed everything. "Miss Santos? This is Margaret Chen from San Francisco General Hospital. I'm calling about Isabella Santos." Maria's blood went cold. "My sister died 3 years ago." "Yes, ma'am, I know. But before her death, she left a sealed envelope with instructions that it only be given to you if certain conditions were met. Those conditions have now been fulfilled." "What conditions?" "I can't discuss that over the phone, but the envelope is marked for Maria if James Henderson ever finds Lucas. Mrs. Santos, can you come to San Francisco?" Maria's hands shook as she hung up the phone. She looked across the office floor to where James was still working, visible through his glass office walls. What had Isabella known? What hadn't she told her? 2 days later, Maria sat in a small office at San Francisco General, holding an envelope that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Dr. Chen, a kind woman in her 50s, sat across from her. "Your sister was very specific about the conditions," Dr. Chen explained. "She said to only give this to you if James Henderson ever came looking for his son, or if he was somehow reunited with Lucas. She made me promise to monitor news about Henderson Industries, to watch for any indication that he had found out about the boy." "How did you know the conditions were met?" Dr. Chen smiled. "Your sister was thorough. She had me set up a Google alert for your name and James Henderson's name appearing together when the Business Journal wrote that article about your promotion to senior director, mentioning that you were raising your nephew." Maria's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in Isabella's handwriting, along with a smaller sealed envelope marked for James. "My dearest Maria, if you're reading this, it means James has found his way back to Lucas, and you've become part of their story. I'm so grateful it's you. There's no one I trust more to navigate what comes next. There are things I never told you about James, about our relationship, about why I made the choices I did. I was young and proud and hurt, and I let those feelings guide decisions that affected more people than just me. The truth is, James didn't abandon us the way I told you. When I told him I was pregnant, yes, he panicked. He was 25, focused on building his company, and scared of being a father. But he didn't just walk away. He offered to marry me, Maria. He said we could make it work, that he would figure out how to balance fatherhood and his business dreams. But I was so angry at his initial reaction, so hurt that his first instinct had been fear rather than joy, that I told him no. I told him I didn't want anything from him. When he kept trying to reach out, offering support, asking to be involved, I had my pride. I convinced myself that if he truly wanted to be a father, he would have been happy from the moment I told him. I returned his letters unopened. I had my lawyer send those cease and desist orders, not the other way around. By the time I realized I had been unfair to him, and to Lucas, I was already sick. The cancer was aggressive, and I knew I didn't have long. I tried to reach out to him then, but his assistant said he was in merger negotiations and couldn't be disturbed. I took that as a sign that he had truly moved on. But Maria, I never stopped loving him, and I never stopped believing that he would be a good father if given the chance. That's why I'm writing this letter, and why I've enclosed one for him. Please don't judge me too harshly for the choices I made. I was young and scared and too proud for my own good. But if James has found his way back to Lucas, if he's trying to be part of his life, then maybe some good can come from my mistakes. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I never stopped believing in the man I fell in love with. All my love, Isabella. P.S. There's one more thing. In my safe deposit box at first, National Bank, the key is taped under Lucas's jewelry box, the one that plays Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, box 247. You'll understand when you see what's inside. Maria sat in the hospital office, tears streaming down her face, holding Isabella's letter and the sealed envelope for James. Everything she thought she knew about her sister's story had been wrong. Dr. Chen handed her tissues. Are you all right? I need to get home, Maria whispered. There's something I need to find. That night, after Lucas was asleep, Maria carefully lifted the bottom panel of his musical jewelry box. Taped underneath was a small silver key. Her hands shook as she held it. The next morning, she stood in the vault at First National Bank, heart pounding as the clerk led her to box 247. Inside, she found things that took her breath away. Photos of Isabella and James together, laughing, clearly in love. Letters James had written that Isabella had never opened, and a small velvet box containing an engagement ring. But what made Maria gasp was what lay at the bottom of the box: legal documents. Adoption papers that Isabella had started but never filed, with James listed as the adoptive father, and a will, not the one Maria knew about, but an earlier version that left custody of Lucas to James Henderson. Isabella had been preparing to reach out to him when she got sick. She had wanted James to raise Lucas, but she had run out of time. Maria closed the safe deposit box with shaking hands, her mind racing. She had a choice to make, one that would affect not just her future, but Lucas's and James's as well. That evening, she found herself standing outside James's penthouse apartment building, holding 2 envelopes in a small velvet box. When he opened the door, clearly surprised to see her, she simply held out Isabella's letter. You need to read this, she said, and when you're done, we need to talk about everything. James read Isabella's letter 3 times, his hands shaking more with each reading. Maria sat across from him in his living room, watching emotions play across his face: confusion, pain, understanding, and finally, a grief so profound it was difficult to witness. She returned my letters unopened, he whispered finally. I thought she hated me. She loved you, Maria said softly. She loved you so much that she convinced herself you couldn't possibly love her back. Not the way she deserved. James set the letter down and looked at Maria with eyes full of anguish. I tried, Maria. After that first conversation when I panicked, I tried to do the right thing. I called her every day for weeks. I sent flowers, letters. I even showed up at her apartment. What happened? She wouldn't see me. Her roommate would come to the door and say Isabella didn't want to talk to me. After a while, I received a legal letter from her attorney saying I was harassing her and demanding I stop all contact. His voice broke. So I did. I thought I was respecting her wishes. Maria reached into her purse and pulled out the unopened letters from the safe deposit box. "These are yours." James stared at the stack of envelopes, his own handwriting clearly visible, all marked "Return to Sender." His hands trembled as he opened the first one, dated just 2 weeks after Isabella had told him about the pregnancy. "My dearest Isabella, I know I hurt you with my reaction, and I will regret that moment for the rest of my life. But please let me try to make this right. I've been thinking about nothing else since you told me about the baby. I was scared, terrified actually, but not of being a father. I was scared of failing you, of failing our child. My own father wasn't around much when I was growing up, and I don't have a roadmap for how to do this right. But I want to try. I want to marry you, not because I feel obligated, but because I love you, and I can't imagine facing the future without you. I want to build something beautiful together, a family, a life, everything. Please call me. Please let me try to be the man you both deserve. All my love, James." Maria watched tears run down James's face as he read letter after letter, months of declarations of love, promises to change his priorities, pleas for just one conversation. The letters grew more desperate as time went on and more heartbroken. "She never saw any of these," Maria said gently. "No," his voice was hoarse, "and by the time I gave up trying to reach her directly, I'd already started believing that maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't father material. Maybe Lucas was better off without me." Maria pulled out the engagement ring box. "She kept this too." James opened the box and stared at the ring he'd bought 27 years ago. A simple solitaire with a diamond that had cost him 3 months' salary back then. "I was going to propose the night she told me about the baby. I had this whole plan. Dinner at the restaurant where we met, flowers, everything." He laughed bitterly. "Instead, I panicked and ruined everything." "James, there's more." Maria showed him the adoption papers. "She was planning to contact you when she got sick. She wanted you to raise Lucas." James studied the documents, his expression growing more complex with each page. "She was going to give me custody. She never stopped believing you'd be a good father. Her pride just got in the way of acting on it." They sat in silence for several minutes, both processing the magnitude of what they'd learned. Finally, James spoke. "What do we do now? Lucas doesn't know any of this. As far as he's concerned, I'm just Mr. James, his aunt's boss who's been nice to him." "I don't know," Maria admitted. "But I think he deserves to know the truth when he's ready. Not all of it. Not the complicated adult parts, but the important parts. That his parents loved each other, that they both wanted him, that sometimes good people make mistakes they can't fix. And us, what does this mean for us?" Maria looked around. James's beautiful penthouse, all glass and steel and expensive art, but somehow empty despite its elegance. "I think it means we need to figure out how to be a family. A real one. I don't know how to do that." "Neither do I," Maria laughed, surprising herself. "I barely knew how to take care of one 6-year-old, let alone navigate. Whatever this is." James smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. "We could learn together. Are you sure that's what you want? Because Lucas and I, we come as a package deal. And we're messy and loud and we eat cereal for dinner sometimes, and our apartment is tiny and—" "Maria," James reached across and took her hand. "I've spent 27 years building a company, accumulating wealth, achieving every goal I set for myself. And until 3 months ago, I was the loneliest man in the world. Lucas and you've given me something I didn't even know I was missing." "What's that?" "A reason to come home at night." That weekend, they decided to tell Lucas the truth, or at least a version of it that a 6-year-old could understand. They sat in James's living room, Lucas between them on the enormous couch, playing with a toy dinosaur. "Lucas," Maria began carefully, "Mr. James and I need to tell you something important." Lucas looked up with the serious expression children get when adults use their important voice. "You remember how I've told you stories about your mama Isabella, and how much she loved you?" "Uh-huh." "Well, it turns out that Mr. James knew your mama when they were both young, before you were born." Lucas's eyes widened. "Really?" James cleared his throat nervously. "I did know her, Lucas. She was very special to me." "Did you love her?" The simple question hit James like a physical blow. Yes, I did. Very much. And did she love you back? Yes, she did. Lucas processed this with the straightforward logic of childhood. So if you loved each other, why weren't you there when I was little? Maria and James exchanged glances. How do you explain pride and fear and miscommunication to a 6-year-old? Sometimes, James said carefully, adults make mistakes. Big mistakes that hurt people they love. I made some very big mistakes that kept me away from your mama and from you. But you're sorry now? I'm sorrier than I know how to say. Lucas nodded solemnly, then brightened. Tia Maria says everyone deserves second chances if they're really sorry, and they try to do better. James looked at Maria with wonder. Your Tia Maria is very wise. So does this mean you're like my dad now? The question hung in the air like a bridge waiting to be crossed. James looked at Maria, who nodded encouragingly. Lucas, I would like to be. If that's okay with you and Tia Maria. Lucas considered this seriously. Would I still call you Mr. James? You can call me whatever feels right to you. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. That night, after Lucas was asleep, Maria found James standing on his balcony, looking out at the city lights. Regrets? She asked, joining him at the railing. Only that it took me 27 years to find my way back to where I belonged, he said. What about you? I'm terrified, Maria admitted. What if I'm not enough? What if Lucas needs more than I can give him? What if I mess this up? James turned to face her. Maria, you've been enough for Lucas every single day of his life. You've been more than enough. You've been everything. And now you don't have to do it alone. As they stood together on the balcony, the city sprawling beneath them, both of them felt something they'd never expected to find. The possibility of a future built not just on love, but on truth, second chances, and the courage to build something new from the pieces of old heartbreak. 6 months later, their unconventional family had settled into a rhythm that surprised everyone, including themselves. Lucas had started calling James Papa James, a compromise that felt both formal enough to respect their growing relationship and intimate enough to acknowledge the bond that was forming between them. But it was Maria's birthday that truly tested the foundation they'd been building. She woke up that Saturday morning in the new apartment. James had helped them find not a penthouse, but a beautiful 2-bedroom place with a park view that felt like home. Lucas was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a conspiratorial grin. Happy birthday, Tia Maria, he shouted, launching himself into her arms. Thank you, mi amor. What are you doing up so early? Papa James is making breakfast. He's been practicing. Indeed, sounds of minor chaos were emanating from the kitchen, along with the smell of something that might have been pancakes. James appeared in the doorway, wearing an apron that read World's Best Chef, a gag gift from Lucas, and holding a spatula like a weapon. Don't look too closely, he warned. I'm still learning the art of dinosaur pancakes. Maria laughed, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the morning coffee. This was what happiness looked like, not perfect, but real. After breakfast, the pancakes were only slightly burnt. James presented her with a small wrapped box. It's not much, he said, suddenly nervous in a way that reminded her he'd spent most of his adult life in boardrooms, not navigating personal relationships. Inside the box was a simple gold necklace with a small pendant, not expensive, by James's standards, but clearly chosen with care. The pendant was engraved with coordinates. They're the coordinates of the hospital where Lucas was born, James explained. The place where your family truly began. Maria felt tears spring to her eyes. James, it's perfect. There's more, Lucas piped up excitedly. Tell her about the surprise. Lucas, you weren't supposed to... What surprise? Maria asked, though she was smiling at their obvious excitement. James sighed in mock frustration. Well, since someone can't keep secrets, we've planned a day out, just the 3 of us. No work, no phones, no responsibilities. They spent the day at the Children's Museum, where James discovered he was surprisingly good at the interactive science exhibits, and Maria found herself taking pictures of every moment, James and Lucas building a tower together, Lucas explaining the butterfly exhibit to James with 6-year-old expertise, the three of them laughing at something silly. It was during lunch at Lucas's favorite pizza place that the conversation took an unexpected turn. "Tia Maria," Lucas said, carefully arranging pepperoni slices on his pizza. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, mi amor. Do you think my mama would be happy about Papa James?" The question caught both adults off guard. They'd been so focused on building their new normal that they hadn't talked much about how Isabella might feel about the situation. Maria chose her words carefully. "I think your mama wanted you to be happy and loved. And you are both of those things now, aren't you?" "Yeah, but—" Lucas struggled with how to express what he was thinking. "Sometimes I worry that maybe she's sad that I'm not missing her enough." Maria's heart broke a little. She looked across the table at James, who seemed equally affected by Lucas's concern. "Lucas," James said gently, "can I tell you something about your mama?" Lucas nodded. "I think your mama's greatest wish was that you would be surrounded by people who love you. She knew she couldn't stay with you forever, so she made sure you had Tia Maria, and maybe she hoped that someday you'd have me too." "You really think so?" "I do. And I think she'd be proud of the kind, smart, funny little boy you've become. Missing her doesn't mean you can't be happy with us." Lucas seemed satisfied with this answer, returning his attention to his pizza. But Maria noticed James staring out the window with a distant expression. That evening, after Lucas was in bed, Maria found James on their small balcony, lost in thought. "Penny for your thoughts?" He smiled at her approach. "Just thinking about what Lucas said today. About Isabella. And I've been carrying guilt about her death, you know, thinking that if I'd tried harder to reach out to her when she was sick, maybe things would have been different." Maria sat down beside him. "James, you can't blame yourself for not knowing she was trying to contact you. You both made choices based on the information you had at the time. I know that intellectually. But emotionally," he sighed, "I keep thinking about all the time I missed. Lucas's first steps, his first words, bedtime stories, birthday parties. I can't get those back." "No, you can't," Maria agreed. "But you can make sure you don't miss anything else." "Is that enough? Is being present now enough to make up for 7 years of absence?" Maria considered his question seriously. "I think Lucas answered that today without realizing it. He's not asking you to make up for the past. He's asking you to be here for his future. There's a difference." James reached over and took her hand. "How did you get so wise about family relationships? You're barely 30. Trial by fire," Maria laughed. "And besides, we're all learning as we go. None of us has a manual for this situation." "True." James was quiet for a moment. "Maria, can I ask you something personal?" "Everything about our lives is personal now. Do you ever think about having children of your own? I mean, Lucas is your nephew, but do you want biological children?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither of them had been ready to address. Maria started, then stopped. "I used to think about it. Before Isabella got sick, I had this whole plan: career, marriage, kids, the traditional path. But then Lucas needed me, and that became my priority." "That's not really an answer." Maria smiled ruefully. "You're right. The honest answer is that I love Lucas like he's my own son. But yes, sometimes I wonder what it would be like to experience pregnancy, to have a baby who's connected to me from the very beginning. And now, given our complicated situation, now I think about what would be best for Lucas. Would having siblings be good for him? Would it make him feel less special, or more like part of a real family?" She paused. "What about you? Do you want more children?" "I want whatever makes you and Lucas happy," James said immediately, then caught himself. "That's not fair, is it? Making you responsible for my desires." "James." "All right, honestly? Yes, I missed everything with Lucas. I'd love the chance to experience those early years, but only if that's what you want too. Only if it would add to our family instead of complicating it." They sat together in comfortable silence, both processing the weight of what they'd just shared. They were talking about a future together, not just as co-guardians of Lucas, but as partners building something permanent. "We don't have to decide anything tonight," Maria said finally. "No, we don't," James squeezed her hand. "But it's good to know we're thinking about the same possibilities." Inside, they could hear Lucas talking in his sleep, a habit he'd developed recently, usually involving conversations with dinosaurs or elaborate explanations of playground politics. They listened to his soft murmur, both thinking about the little boy who had brought them together, and the future they were slowly building around his needs and their growing love for each other. "James?" "Yeah?" Isabella would be happy about all of this, about Lucas having a father who shows up, about me not having to do this alone, about the family we're becoming. "You really believe that?" "I really do." That night, as Maria lay in bed, she thought about the coordinates on her new necklace and what they represented, not just where Lucas's life began, but where their family had started without them even knowing it. Sometimes the most important moments happened when you weren't looking, and sometimes the best families were the ones you built from broken pieces, second chances, and the courage to love despite the risk of loss. 2 years later, Maria stood in the bathroom of Henderson Industries' executive floor, staring at a positive pregnancy test with a mixture of joy and terror. She was pregnant, something she and James had been hoping for since their conversation on her birthday, but which now felt overwhelmingly real. Through the thin walls, she could hear the sounds of the company holiday party in full swing. It was their biggest celebration of the year, with employees, clients, and board members all gathered in the main conference room that had been transformed into a winter wonderland. Lucas, now 8, was somewhere in that crowd, probably charming everyone with his latest stories about school and his newfound obsession with astronomy. James was likely making his rounds, playing the perfect host while secretly counting the minutes until he could escape back to their family. Maria took a deep breath, tucked the test into her purse, and tried to compose herself. She'd tell James tonight after the party, when they were alone. But when she emerged from the bathroom, she nearly collided with Catherine, James's assistant, who looked uncharacteristically flustered. "Maria, thank goodness. I need your help. The caterer just informed me that half the dessert table collapsed. Mr. Yamamoto from Tokyo is asking specifically for you to explain the new international protocols, and Lucas is currently giving an impromptu lecture about black holes to the board of directors." Despite her emotional state, Maria laughed. "Which crisis should I handle first?" "Board of directors." "They seem charmed, but I'm not sure. 8-year-old astronomy facts are appropriate for a business gathering." Maria made her way through the crowded room, accepting congratulations on her recent promotion to Vice President of International Operations and exchanging pleasantries with clients she'd worked with over the past 2 years. The company had grown significantly, largely due to their expansion into Latin American markets, something Maria had spearheaded with great success. She found Lucas in the center of a small crowd, gesturing enthusiastically as he explained something to a group of very serious-looking men and women in expensive suits. "Saisi too, and that's why black knee holes are actually really important for understanding how galaxies form," Lucas was saying. "My teacher says I should be an astrophysicist when I grow up, but Papa James says I could do anything I want." "Lucas," Maria approached gently, "maybe we should let these nice people get back to their party." "Oh, hi, Tia Maria. I was just telling them about space." "Did you know that?" "That's fascinating, mi amor. But why don't you go find some of that chocolate cake before it's all gone?" As Lucas scampered off, Maria turned to apologize to the board members, but found them smiling warmly. "Don't apologize," said Mrs. Chen, the board chair. "That young man is delightful. James has told us how bright he is, but seeing it firsthand is remarkable. He's excited about his school science fair project," Maria explained. "And he should be. Intelligence like that should be nurtured." Mrs. Chen paused. "Maria, if I may say so, you and James have built something beautiful together. Not just professionally, but personally. It's evident in how you've raised Lucas." Before Maria could respond, she felt James's hand on her lower back, a gesture so natural now that she barely noticed it, though it still sent a small thrill through her. "Ladies and gentlemen, I hope Lucas wasn't boring you with his space facts, James said with a smile that showed he was anything but concerned about that possibility. On the contrary, said Mr. Foster, another board member, he's got quite a future ahead of him. You both should be proud. After the board members moved on, James turned to Maria with a questioning look. You okay? You seem a little... I'm fine. Just tired. It's been a long day. Why don't you go home? I can handle the rest of the party and bring Lucas home later. No, I'm fine, really. But James knew her well enough by now to recognize when she was struggling. He guided her to a quieter corner of the room, his hand never leaving her back. Maria, what's going on? You've seemed off all week. It's nothing. Just work stress. Try again. We don't lie to each other, remember? Before Maria could answer, Lucas appeared at their sides, chocolate cake smeared on his chin, and excitement radiating from every pore. Papa James, Tia Maria, you have to come see. They set up a telescope on the roof. A telescope? James looked confused. I may have mentioned Lucas's current obsession to the event planners, Maria admitted. I thought it would be a nice surprise. James's expression softened. Even after 2 years, he was still sometimes amazed by the thoughtful ways Maria included Lucas in everything, making him feel special and valued. Can we go see, please? Lucas was practically vibrating with anticipation. Of course we can, James said. Lead the way, astronomer. The three of them made their way to the building's rooftop, where indeed a professional-grade telescope had been set up with an astronomer to operate it. Lucas was in heaven, asking rapid-fire questions and peering through the eyepiece with wonder. As Lucas was occupied with the telescope, James and Maria stood a little apart, looking out over the city lights. This was incredibly thoughtful, James said quietly. He's going to remember this forever. Good. He deserves to feel special. Maria, James turned to face her fully. Something's wrong. I can see it in your eyes. Please tell me what it is. Maria looked at Lucas, completely absorbed in his astronomical exploration, then at James, this man who had somehow become her best friend, her partner, her family. The pregnancy test in her purse felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. I'm pregnant, she whispered. James went completely still. For a moment, the only sounds were the distant party noise from below and Lucas's excited chatter with the astronomer. Yeah? James's voice was barely audible. I found out an hour ago. I was going to tell you tonight after the party, but... Maria. James's voice was thick with emotion. Are you? How do you feel about it? Terrified, happy, overwhelmed. She laughed shakily. All of the above. James stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face gently. And us? How do you feel about us? It was a question that had been hovering between them for months. They lived together, parented together, built a life together, but they'd never defined exactly what they were to each other beyond. Co-guardians of Lucas and business partners. James, Papa James, Tia Maria, come look at Saturn. Lucas's voice interrupted, full of wonder and excitement. They spent the next hour on the rooftop, taking turns looking through the telescope while Lucas provided enthusiastic commentary about everything they were seeing. But Maria was acutely aware of James's presence beside her, the way his hand lingered when he helped her adjust the telescope, the meaningful glances he kept shooting in her direction. Finally, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, they made their way back downstairs. Lucas fell asleep in the car on the way home, exhausted by excitement and sugar, leaving Maria and James in relative privacy for the first time since her announcement. We need to talk, James said quietly as they pulled into their parking garage. I know. They carried Lucas up to the apartment and put him to bed, moving through their established routine with the comfort of 2 years of practice. But tonight everything felt different, charged with possibility and unspoken questions. Once Lucas was settled, they found themselves in their living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch like nervous teenagers. So, James began. So, Maria echoed. A baby. A baby. James ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Maria had learned meant he was processing something overwhelming. Maria, I need you to know that whatever you want to do, Whatever decision you make, I'll support you completely. What do you want me to do? I want—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I want you to want this baby. I want you to want to raise this child with me. I want us to be a real family. Not just two people who happen to live together and co-parent Lucas." Maria felt her heart skip. "And what would that look like? Us being a real family?" James moved closer to her on the couch. "It would look like marriage, if you'll have me. It would look like building something permanent together, something that acknowledges what we've already become. James, I know this isn't the most romantic proposal. I know we've done everything backwards, lived together before dating, became parents before becoming partners. But Maria, I love you. I love the way you make dinosaur pancakes for Lucas, and remember, every client's birthday. I love how you switch between 3 languages when you're excited and how you always know exactly what to say to make everything better." Tears were streaming down Maria's face now. "I love you too. I have for months, but I was scared to say it. Scared it would complicate things with Lucas or change our dynamic at work, or scared I might not feel the same way. That too." James reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, different from the one Isabella had kept, but similar in its simple elegance. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment," he admitted. "I had this whole plan to dinner at the restaurant where we had our first real conversation. Outside the office, flowers, a speech I'd been practicing. But somehow sitting here in our living room, with Lucas asleep down the hall and our baby growing inside you, this feels like exactly the right moment." He slid off the couch and knelt in front of her, opening the box to reveal a beautiful solitaire diamond surrounded by smaller stones. "Maria Santos, will you marry me? Will you let me be your husband and Lucas's father, and this new baby's dad? Will you build the rest of our lives with me?" "Yes," Maria whispered, then louder. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." James slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her down into a kiss that tasted like promises and new beginnings. They broke apart when they heard a small voice from the hallway. "Are you guys being mushy out there?" They turned to see Lucas standing in his pajamas, hair sticking up at odd angles, looking at them with the exaggerated disgust children reserve for displays of affection. "Sorry, mi amor. Did we wake you up?" "I heard talking." Lucas padded over to them, climbing onto the couch between them without invitation. "Why is Tia Maria crying?" "Are you sad?" "No, baby, I'm happy. Very, very happy." "Why?" Maria and James exchanged glances. They'd agreed to always be honest with Lucas in age-appropriate ways. "Well," James began carefully, "I just asked Tia Maria to marry me and she said yes." Lucas's eyes went wide. "Like marry? With a wedding and everything?" "If that's okay with you," Maria said, "it would mean Papa James would officially be your dad, and we'd all be a family for real." Lucas considered this seriously. "Would I have to wear a tuxedo to the wedding?" James laughed. "Only if you want to. And would you live here forever and ever?" "Forever and ever." "And would I get to help plan the wedding? Because I have some really good ideas about dinosaur decorations." Maria and James burst into laughter. "We'll definitely consider your decorating suggestions," Maria promised. Lucas seemed satisfied with this answer. Then, with the directness children are famous for, he asked, "Are you going to have more kids?" Maria's hand instinctively went to her still flat stomach. "Would you like to have a baby brother or sister someday?" "Maybe, as long as they're not boring like Tommy's baby sister. All she does is cry and sleep." "Well, all babies cry and sleep at first," James explained. "But they get more interesting as they get older. Like how I got more interesting when I learned about space." "Exactly like that." Lucas yawned hugely. "Okay, I think having a baby would be good. But can we talk about it more tomorrow?" "I'm really tired." They tucked him back into bed, both marveling at how easily he'd accepted their news. As they walked back to the living room, Maria shook her head in amazement. "He took that better than I expected. Kids are resilient, and Lucas has already been through so many changes in his life. He's learned to roll with them." They settled back on the couch, Maria curled against James's side, both of them processing the magnitude of the evening. "So," James said softly, "we're having a baby." "We're having a baby." Maria confirmed, the reality of it finally sinking in. Are you scared? Terrified, James admitted. I missed everything with... Lucas, what if I don't know how to be a good father from the beginning? What if I don't know how to be pregnant? What if something goes wrong? What if Lucas feels left out when the baby comes? What if we're both overthinking this? James suggested, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Probably. But that's what parents do, right? Worry about everything? If our track record with Lucas is any indication, yes. They sat in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts about the future they were building together. James? When should we get married? I mean, I don't want to be hugely pregnant at our wedding, but I also don't want to wait too long. What would make you happy? Something small. Just us, Lucas, maybe a few close friends. I don't need a big production. I just want to be married to you. That sounds perfect. What about next month? We could do something simple. Maybe at the park where we take Lucas to play, or here in the apartment if you'd prefer. The park sounds lovely. Lucas would love that. He could show off his favorite playground. To whoever we invite. It's settled then. Next month we get married. In 6 months or so we have a baby. And hopefully we figure out how to do all of this without completely messing it up. Hey, Maria turned to look at him seriously. We've been doing pretty well so far. Lucas is happy and healthy and brilliant. The business is thriving. We've managed to build something good together, even when we didn't know what we were doing. You're right. We make a pretty good team. The best team. As they finally headed to bed, Maria caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway. Mirror, her new engagement ring catching the light, her face glowing with happiness and possibility. 3 years ago, she'd walked into James's office expecting rejection and humiliation. Instead, she'd found love, family, and a future she'd never dared to dream about. Sometimes, she reflected, the most important doors opened when you were brave enough to walk through them, even when you couldn't see what was waiting on the other side. 1 month later, Maria stood in front of her bedroom mirror, smoothing down the simple white dress she'd chosen for their wedding. It wasn't a traditional wedding gown. She'd opted for a knee-length sundress with delicate lace sleeves that was elegant but practical for their outdoor ceremony in the park. At nearly 2 months pregnant, she wasn't showing yet, but she felt different, more aware of her body, more conscious of the tiny life growing inside her. The morning sickness had been manageable so far, just mild nausea that James had taken to treating with elaborate breakfast presentations designed to tempt her appetite. Tia Maria, you look like a princess! Lucas burst into the room, resplendent in his chosen wedding outfit, a navy blue suit, with a tie covered in tiny planets and stars. You look pretty handsome yourself, mi amor. Are you ready to be my ring bearer? I've been practicing. Lucas pulled a small velvet pillow from behind his back. See, I won't drop the rings. The rings in question were simple gold bands they'd chosen together. Maria's wedding band designed to complement her engagement ring, and James's a classic style that wouldn't interfere with his work. Nothing flashy or expensive, just symbols of the commitment they were making to each other. Perfect. Now, are you ready to go marry Papa James? I'm ready. But Tia Maria? Yes. After you're married, what should I call you? You'll still be my Tia, but you'll also be Papa James's wife. Maria knelt down to Lucas's eye level, her heart swelling with love, for this thoughtful little boy who was always trying to figure out how relationships worked. I'll always be your Tia Maria no matter what. That will never change. Being married to Papa James doesn't change how much I love you or how important you are to me. Okay, good. Because I was worried maybe I'd have to share you. Lucas, listen to me carefully. Love isn't something you have to share like toys or candy. Love grows bigger when you add more people to it. Me loving Papa James doesn't mean I love you less. It means our family has more love in it. Lucas considered this seriously, then nodded. Like how when we got Cosmos, I still loved my stuffed dinosaur just as much. But I also loved the cat, exactly like that. Cosmos was the kitten they'd adopted 2 weeks earlier, a tiny orange tabby that Lucas had named after his current fascination with space. James had initially been skeptical about adding a pet to their household, but he'd been won over when he came home to find Lucas reading astronomy books to the kitten while it purred in his lap. "Are you ready?" Maria asked, taking Lucas's hand. "Ready!" They made their way to Riverside Park, where James was waiting with their small group of guests. Catherine was there, of course, along with Dr. Reynolds, a few close friends from work, and Mrs. Patterson, Lucas's teacher, who had become like a grandmother figure to him over the past year. James stood under a simple arch decorated with white flowers and greenery, wearing a charcoal grey suit that made his blue eyes even more striking. When he saw Maria approaching, his face lit up with a smile so bright it took her breath away. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful. They'd written their own vows, and when it came time to speak them, Maria felt her voice grow thick with emotion. "James, 3 years ago, I walked into your office carrying Lucas and expecting the worst. Instead, I found my home. You taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up, day after day, and choosing to love each other through everything. You've been Lucas's father in every way that matters, and you've been my partner in building something beautiful from broken pieces. I promise to love you, to build our dreams together, and to never stop believing in second chances." James's vows brought tears to more than a few eyes. "Maria, you walked into my office and changed everything. You showed me what courage looks like, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to do what's right despite being afraid. You taught me that being a father isn't about biology. It's about love and commitment and showing up every single day. You gave me Lucas, you gave me a family, and now you're giving me the chance to be the husband and father I always wanted to be. I promise to love you and Lucas and our growing family with everything I have, for as long as I live." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, James's kiss was gentle and full of promise. Lucas cheered loudly, earning laughs from their small audience. The reception was equally simple, a picnic in the park with sandwiches from their favorite deli, a small cake Lucas had helped design, complete with edible dinosaurs and stars, and impromptu dancing to music from a portable speaker. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Maria found herself sitting on a park bench, watching James push Lucas on the swings, while Cosmos explored nearby on his leash. Her new husband was patient and attentive, listening to Lucas's chatter about everything and nothing, occasionally catching Maria's eye and smiling. "You look happy," Catherine said, settling beside her on the bench. "I am happy. Ridiculously, completely happy. It shows. You know, I've worked for James for 15 years, and I've never seen him like this. You and Lucas, you've given him something he didn't even know he was missing. He's given us something too. Stability, security, but more than that, he's given Lucas a father who adores him. And you? What has he given you?" Maria considered the question, watching her new husband demonstrate the proper technique for maximum swing height to her nephew. "Partnership," she said finally. "For 3 years I was doing everything alone, making all the decisions, carrying all the responsibility, worrying about everything by myself. Now I have someone who shares all of that with me. Someone who cares about Lucas as much as I do. And the baby? How are you feeling about that?" Maria's hand went automatically to her stomach. Excited, nervous. "Sometimes I wake up at night and can't believe this is really my life. Married to an amazing man, raising Lucas, starting our own family. It feels too good to be true sometimes." "It's not too good to be true. It's what you deserve, what you've all deserved all along." As if he could sense they were talking about him, James looked over and waved, his face bright with joy. Lucas immediately demanded to be pushed higher, and James obliged with an exaggerated grunt of effort that made Lucas giggle. "They're going to be such good fathers," Catherine observed. "James already is a good father. Lucas adores him, and the new baby will too. Have you thought about names yet? We've thrown around a few ideas. If it's a girl, James likes Isabella, after Lucas's mother. If it's a boy, Sir," Maria smiled, "Lucas has been lobbying hard for Asteroid." Catherine laughed. "Please tell me you're not seriously considering that." "Well, it would certainly be unique." As the evening grew cooler, they began packing up their wedding picnic. Lucas was starting to get tired, and Cosmos had had enough adventure for one day. James helped Maria to her feet, his hand lingering on her lower back in the protective gesture she'd grown to love. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Henderson?" he asked softly. "Mrs. Henderson," Maria repeated, testing out the sound. "I like that." "Good, because you're stuck with it now." They walked home as a family, James carrying a sleepy Lucas piggyback while Maria managed their wedding gifts and supplies. It wasn't a dramatic or fairy tale ending, but it was perfect in its ordinary happiness. That night, after Lucas was asleep and Cosmos was curled up in his favorite spot by the window, Maria and James sat on their couch, no longer their couch, but the couch in their home, the first thing they officially owned together as husband and wife. "So," James said, pulling her against his side, "how does it feel to be married?" "Exactly like yesterday, but also completely different," Maria answered honestly. "Like everything just became more official." "I know what you mean. This morning I was just James, tonight I'm your husband. And Lucas's stepfather. And our baby's father. And terrified about all of it," James admitted. "Good. If you weren't at least a little scared, I'd be worried about your judgment." They sat in comfortable silence, both processing the magnitude of the day and what it meant for their future. "James? Do you think Isabella would approve of us getting married, of how we're raising Lucas?" It was a question that came up occasionally, usually late at night when they were both feeling reflective about the complicated history that had brought them together. "I think Isabella would be amazed by the man Lucas is becoming and grateful that he has two people who love him unconditionally," James said carefully. "As for us, I think she'd want us to be happy. I think she'd want Lucas to grow up in a house full of love, even though we're together because of choices she made. Especially because of choices she made. Maria, Isabella gave us both the greatest gift imaginable when she chose to have Lucas. Everything good in my life, right, now exists because of that decision." Maria felt tears prick her eyes, pregnancy hormones, making her more emotional than usual. "I miss her sometimes. I wish she could see how everything turned out." "Maybe she can," James said softly. "Maybe she's watching Lucas learn about black holes and seeing you build this incredible career and watching us become a family. Maybe she knows that her son is loved and safe and happy." "You really believe that?" "I want to believe that. I hope she knows that I finally got it right." The next morning, Maria woke up as a married woman for the first time, with morning sickness that was decidedly stronger than it had been the week before. James found her in the bathroom, pale and miserable. "Hey," he said softly, rubbing her back as she leaned over the sink. "This is new. Welcome to trimester 1, Maria groaned. "I was hoping I might skip this part. What can I do?" "Ginger tea, crackers. Call in sick for you?" "All of the above, maybe." James was instantly in caretaking mode, settling her on the couch with pillows and blankets while he made ginger tea and toast. When Lucas emerged from his bedroom ready for school, he took in the scene with the seriousness of an 8-year-old, trying to understand adult problems. "Is Tia Maria sick?" "She's going to have a baby, remember? Sometimes that makes mommies feel sick for a while," James explained. "Will she be okay?" "She'll be fine. Her body is just working really hard to grow your new baby brother or sister." Lucas considered this, then disappeared into his room. He returned a few minutes later with his favorite stuffed dinosaur and placed it carefully next to Maria on the couch. "Mr. Triceratops always makes me feel better when I'm sick," he announced solemnly. "Thank you, mi amor," Maria managed, feeling simultaneously nauseous and overwhelmed with love for this thoughtful little boy. As James got Lucas ready for school, Maria closed her eyes and let herself process everything. That had changed in the last 24 hours. Yesterday morning she'd been Maria Santos, single guardian of her nephew, successful businesswoman, girlfriend living with her partner. Today she was Maria Henderson, wife, expectant mother, stepmother, and part of a family unit that was still finding its shape. The morning sickness would pass. The pregnancy would progress. Lucas would adjust to being a big brother. James would figure out how to be a biological father while continuing to be Lucas's dad. They would all learn together, make mistakes together, and hopefully build something lasting and beautiful together. When James returned from dropping Lucas at school, he found Maria sitting on the couch, still clutching the stuffed dinosaur and looking thoughtful. Feeling better? A little. James, sit with me for a minute. He settled beside her, automatically pulling her feet into his lap, a gesture of casual intimacy that spoke to how comfortable they'd become with each other. I've been thinking about what comes next, Maria said. We're married now. We're having a baby. Lucas is happy and settled. Everything is good. But I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to go wrong, for this to be too good to be true. James was quiet for a moment, understanding her fear because he felt it too. Maria, do you know what I've learned over the past 3 years? What? Good things don't happen to us, despite the hard times we've been through. Good things happen to us because of what we learned from the hard times. You know how to fight for what matters, because you fought for Lucas. I know how to appreciate family because I lost mine for so long. We know how to build something together, because we both know what it's like to do everything alone. So you think we've earned this happiness? I think we've learned how to recognize it, protect it, and not take it for granted. That's more valuable than earning it. Maria considered this, absently stroking the soft fabric of Lucas's dinosaur. I want this baby so much it scares me sometimes. Because you're afraid something might happen? Because I'm afraid I might not be as good a mother to this baby as I've been to Lucas. With Lucas, I didn't have a choice. He needed me, so I figured it out. But this baby I'm choosing. What if I'm not enough? James shifted to face her more fully. Maria, you turned yourself into Lucas's mother overnight when Isabella died. You gave up your old life, moved across the country, changed careers, all to make sure he had everything he needed. You've been making sacrifice after sacrifice for 3 years to give him the best possible life. That's different. Lucas was already here, already formed. He was Isabella's son who needed care. And this baby will be our child who needs care. The same care, the same love, the same commitment. You already know how to do this. But what if... Maria, James took her hands in his. Stop. You're going to be an incredible mother to this baby. Just like you've been an incredible mother to Lucas, and I'm going to be right there with you. Figuring it out together. Even when I'm hormonal and crazy. Especially then. Even when I'm huge and uncomfortable and demanding. Dinosaur pancakes at midnight? I'll master dinosaur pancakes in every possible variation. Maria finally smiled, feeling some of the anxiety ease from her chest. Okay, but I'm holding you to the midnight pancake promise. Deal. Now do you feel well enough to eat some actual breakfast? The baby needs nutrition, even if you feel terrible. As James bustled around the kitchen, preparing something that might stay down, Maria sat on their couch in their home, surrounded by the life they'd built together. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't what she'd planned 3 years ago, but it was theirs, messy and complicated and full of love. And for the first time since she'd seen that positive pregnancy test, Maria let herself be completely, unreservedly happy about the future they were building together. Thank you so much for joining me for this complete journey through Maria, James, and Lucas's story. From that first desperate interview to a wedding in the park, we've watched them build a family from broken pieces, second chances, and the courage to love despite the risk of loss. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead us exactly where we need to be. And that family is about so much more than biology. It's about showing up every single day and choosing love. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to let me know what city you're watching from. I love connecting with people from around the world through these stories of hope and unexpected connections. Sometimes our greatest vulnerabilities really do become our greatest strengths. And sometimes the most important interviews aren't about jobs at all. They're about finding our way back to what matters most.